Welcome to the Propreneur Podcast, where we help practice owners become better entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Dino Watt. And welcome once again, everybody, to the Propreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Dino Watt. Excited to have you here and excited to have our guest for today, who I have known now for, 4 years?
At least, I think.
Yeah, at least 4 or 5 years, right? I've seen your kids grow up, so that's how long I've known you. This is Dr. Shawn Bader from Faces Orthodontics here in Arizona. Excited to talk with you today. Excited to share your story and let people know a lot more about you and best practices you've been using. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Dino.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Well, do you want me to call you Shawn or Dr. Bader or
whatever? I feel like we're
king of all things? What is it?
You can call me Shawn. That's fine.
All right, Shawn. So the first thing we always love to do when it comes to our guest is really find out their story. Find out, as I go into offices and I talk to people, I always want to know, what's your orthodontic story? What's your chiropractic story? Why did you choose this profession? So I'd love for you to just share a little bit about why you got into orthodontics in general.
All right. Well, that's a great question. So I actually even went as far as making a YouTube video that we have online. Let's go, why I got into orthodontics.
Nice. Love it.
And it's one of those long stories. So when I was an undergrad in school, my mom always wanted me to be a doctor. So I was finishing my senior year and I applied to everything under the sun. So medical school, dental school, graduate school. And I ended up getting into the dental school at University of Toronto. And I was like, I had never really thought of that. So I just kind of went with the flow and I went into dental school. I didn't know what to expect because I had no family members that were in the field. So it was kind of a blank slate. And
yeah, sure.
It was kind of interesting. The program had a big orthodontic background. So as an undergrad, I got, some good experience seeing what ortho was. And I think you either hated it or loved it. And I was on the side that I loved it. And so I thought, that's what I want to do. And then my wife decided she wanted to go to dental school too.
Oh, interesting.
Done. So she went to dental school after I graduated and I opened a practice. I dabbled in ortho and my practice and I realized that wasn't going to be enough. So when she graduated, I went back to do ortho.
So you guys were married before you went to school or while you were in school?
So we got married while my wife was in school. Not while I was in school. We were dating and going out. But she decided when I was in dental school that that's what she wanted to do. So we kind of played back and forth. I went to school, she worked. She went to school, I worked, then back and forth.
You know what? That makes me think I'm going to have to get her on the podcast so we can get her side of the story too, right? So we can find.
Hopefully it's the same, right?
Well, so you got into orthodontics when you were looking at it in the dental realm of like, oh, this would be interesting. And as you're dabbling in it, what was the thing that sparked your biggest interest into doing orthodontics over dentistry?
So I think I like doing it and I like the concept of, you get to work with, today it's different, but you get to, like I thought at that point, you get to work with young kids, it's kind of fun and they're more easygoing, you can do more stuff with them. And so I like that. And the problem though, in a general practice is you're trying to do everything. And so I would have 1 or 2 ortho patients come in. You don't know what you don't know. And I've heard a lot of people say that. And I just found that it was difficult to do. So, I needed that job to help my wife go through school. So when she graduated, she took over the practice and I was able to go back to school. And I just wanted to know more about that field because I liked it.
And when you started practicing, you went to school first up in Canada, but then you came down to, was it Michigan?
Yeah, so I went to school at University of Toronto and I graduated. My wife got into University of Michigan. So we ended up with an office in Windsor, Ontario, a general dental office. And then, she went and took over my office. I went to University of Kentucky to their ortho program. We eventually sold that practice and kind of drifted warmer and warmer weather into Arizona. So,
Well, I was just surprised that any of the American universities would accept your Canadian diploma. So that's really good.
so they accept it. It's not, they'll take your money, right? So
I like to razz my Canadian friends every once in a while, but you're more of an Arizonian than I am, and you've been here long enough. So yeah, you came over to the warm weather.
yeah.
Right, that's awesome. Well, what do you find is kind of your greatest pleasure of practicing orthodontics? Like, what's the thing that gets you up every day and gets you excited about it?
I like the new technology. I know we were talking just before how we were able this year, we started doing Sure Smile and kind of like from the past, I've been big into, okay, what is the newest, latest technology? Like we use self-ligating brackets. We haven't taken an impression in my office in a good 5, 6 years now, and we intraoral scanners. And it just keeps getting more and more towards digital type treatment. So, that's what gets me, jazzed and excited about this is to kind of, okay, what's new? What new technologies can I bring to my patients to help get them better treatment, treat them faster, all those things. So.
Well, then the evolution of the practice that we talk about so much on this show, and I talk about with my clients so often, has got to be something that is really that you're digging quite a bit, right? To see how things are changing in the last 5 years. You mentioned a lot of digital happening with Invisalign liners and other liner companies. So where I think a lot of people worry about it, maybe even fear it, you seem to be embracing it.
I think you have to. So I think that's probably one of the big challenges that people talk about of the future, but I don't think you can ever take the doctor out of their kind of relationship because there's only so much that you can do if you're going to do aligners. They're not a be all and end all cure. And I kind of say to people, hey, that might work for some people. It might not work for other people. And, when people try that money level, they might try it and it might not work for them, but they might not be happy. And then where are they going to go after that? They have somebody like me. So it's just the awareness that creates probably is going to benefit us as a profession. So.
Well, I think that's super insightful where you have to be somebody who doesn't get angry about the innovation of technology or even how things are going, even when it's going direct to consumer stuff. You just have to be aware of it, and then now you can actually talk to it. You can be the person who's able to be there when maybe things don't go right. And I often talk to doctors about how I personally actually got what's it called? Smile Direct Club, right? I actually went through the process. I ordered it. I went through the entire thing because I wanted to make, and I wore them for 4 months. And I saw the shift in my teeth because I wanted to be able to speak to it. I'm not an orthodontist, and I wanted to be able to speak to the problem or the challenge that could be. And I tell doctors all the time, you can't just be, oh, that's bad. You have to know why you can actually help solve the problem that's inevitably going to come. So I love that you're thinking that way. All right. So tell me then, what have you found to be the best practices for yourself and your business, whether that be from seeing what other people have done and you don't want to do that or fall into that trap, or just through trial and error? What have you found to be the best thing that you've done for your business to help it grow, to help it be relevant right now?
So, and I say this to people all the time, just talking outside of like orthodontics, so in general business practices, the stuff that you and I worked on together where you develop a business culture with core values and make that part of how your business works all the time. I think that's crucially important in any business. Just for me, because it allows you to do more of what you want to do. Because if you have your vision and you know where you want to go and have your core values, then you can say, hey, I shouldn't be doing this because that doesn't relate to how I want to grow. And people seek you out for what you do. So it's very interesting to see how that kind of, it takes time, but it helps, and it helps grow things. So you don't know this, but we just closed a deal last week, and I bought somebody's small practice. So now we have 3 offices.
Wow, that's awesome.
So it's kind of interesting. So we spent, so we're going to renovate the office where it is, but because the deal closed last week, they had patients booked. It's a small practice, but I wanted, the doctor, I knew the doctor, so I want to finish his patients. And it was just a nice location and a good addition to our office. But we were in there yesterday for the first time and met some of the patients. And you look at the type of treatment that they're doing, because it's different than my treatment method. So I have to integrate that all together. But I just was thinking this morning when I back at my main office, okay, we do things so much differently, and we're going to have to turn things over and improve things over there. So, but it was really, it's interesting. So, but I'm excited about the new addition. So it's
Right. Well, now that you have the blueprint of what you want to do. You're not going in there going like, you know what to do. You go, oh, okay, it's going to be different, but I know where to place that puzzle piece to make it work. I'd love to ask a little bit more about that. Then, when it comes to your decision to buy that practice, when it comes to your decision to switch over to being more focused on Sure Smile, one of my focuses, I guess it will be, when I talk about core values, for example. When you have your vision, you have your core values, you know where to go. Like, you're tethered to the vision. So when things go off track, which things do, every business has their challenges, that it pulls you back to that thing. It's tethered to the vision and the goal and the core values. How did you use the core values that you developed and your vision to make the decision, which is a big decision, to buy another practice?
I know we've talked about stuff, because part of my goal was to grow the practice and, to be able to, I feel like we provide a really good service, and I know everybody does too, but, I like how we're going. We have a good time. One of our core values is amusement park screaming fun. And another one is, relentless pursuit of knowledge. So all those things kind of tied together. And I know that when we were at your Propreneur session, not last year, but the year before, one of the big things that I took away from that was the biggest way for me to grow my practice was to see more new patients, or get more new patients in the door. And then just through that year and kind of, some changes that occurred in the office, I felt that, we needed to add another location. So I was looking, and, they send out emails with, okay, these practices are for sale. And it just sort of happened that I got this letter, and I was looking at the same time, and it seemed like an ideal location. It's kind of in between my 2 current offices. It's 6 minutes from my house.
Wow.
And, it's a good spot, a good location. There's a pediatric dental office right next door. And, the price was right. I felt I was helping somebody out in the process. So, as part of my core values relate to helping other people out. And it was a doctor that I knew who wanted to retire. So it kind of everything just kind of,
Love it.
stars lined up.
Yeah. Well, the stars did line up, but I think the stars line up every single day, just not everybody's ready to receive them or to see them, right? And you obviously were in that place of, you knew who you were, you knew what the vision of the company is and what your practice is, you knew your core values. So I'm assuming it made the decision to move forward a lot easier.
Yeah, no, that it was, it was kind of funny. We were away on vacation. We got back, I got this letter, and I called Sharon and I said, hey, guess this letter, what I got? And I said, I've been looking, this looks like a great spot. Let's pursue it. It took longer than I thought, like these business deals always do, but it kind of all worked out. So we're excited. I'm really excited too. So
That's awesome. Very cool. Well, congratulations on that. That's amazing. One of the things we like to talk about here is the fact that every company has their challenges, right?
mhm.
Doesn't matter if you're doing 6 million and you're rocking it, or you're doing $650,000 and you're trying to get that $1 million mark. Every challenge, every office, every company has their challenges. Where is your biggest challenge right now in your practice?
So I think our biggest challenge immediately is going to be to integrate the new practice in. So the new practice didn't come with any employees, which I think is probably a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad
Interesting.
thing, but it was a very small practice. So I think, but the biggest challenge is going to be to integrate things. The office we need to rent, and the office was 20 years old. So we're doing some renovation, all that integration, computer system swap overs, all the stuff that's involved in getting the patients in our office, figuring out what's going on with them. That's a challenge. The good thing is that there's not a ton of them, but I think that was one of my biggest challenges when I started is when you take over a practice from somebody and you're treating all of their patients, that's a huge challenge. So fortunately, this is a smaller practice, but just to kind of add a third location, figure out our scheduling, team members, who's going where, or how we're going to do everything. Two practices is good. Once you add three, I think it adds a whole new.
It's like having a third child.
Yeah.
Right. It's like the other two like split off, and now you're playing defense all over the place. Well, here's the thing. I would definitely recommend, as you're going through this challenge of whether it be renovation, whether it be getting all the systems put into place, the key that I think a lot of people forget about is the importance of clear communication when it comes to all the moving parts. Even the clear communication of this is stressing me out, or I'm not sure how to do this, because your team members that are now entrenched in your core values and your vision, it's so important for them to continually get updates from you of, are they doing it right, where you're struggling, where you need some more help, so they can help lift that weight. I see often where we have something new happening, new movement, maybe a new practice being open, and the doctor gets into that I'm going to figure this out mode, which you guys do, right? It's something that you've been doing your whole life. It's I will figure this problem out. And we forget to, if we just say, hey, I'm struggling with understanding how to do this, or I need some help to do this, or will you take this on for me, that the team that you've built is more than willing to say, yeah, I'll take that on for you, or just tell me where to go and what to do, and I'll be happy to help you out. So keep those communication lines open with them and with your spouse as well about what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too. So I know you met Kelly. So Kelly's been great in my office, and I let her do pretty much anything. So that you taught me to delegate, which is
Right.
good. So you want to be able to delegate those things to people, and she's been great taking this on and doing the non-dental side, ortho side of it, and kind of helping with the transition to go as smoothly as possible. So it's been good. Her and Marissa have been great. They're kind of willing to take things on. So
that's awesome. I always say, when you know what you want and you put that kind of line in the sand of this is what I'll accept and what I'll accept, the right people will gravitate towards you. And the people who aren't on board, we love them and they'll go away, and that's okay. So that's powerful. Well, we've come to the part of the podcast where we actually like to ask you a few questions about yourself to get to know you. It's kind of like a rapid fire type thing. You want to play?
Go for it.
All right. So what's the number one thing that you wish they would have taught you in ortho school or graduate school or anywhere in between?
Jeez, that's Probably the number one thing is, you know, how to probably employee management, like how to have those tough conversations with
Mm,
employees when they're not towing the line, or, when you feel like you want to be not, you don't want to have that confrontation or have that kind of confrontation with somebody. I think how to handle people is really challenging. So.
what a great thing that would be too, right? Because it's something you're all going to have to deal with, whether you're working, if you decide to get out of school and go to corporate, or
Mhm.
whether you're going to have your own practice. You're going to have those conversations with the people that that you're managing. So,
Mhm.
so true. All right. What is a book that you believe every private practice owner should be reading?
Oh, wow. How about your book, Dino? I think it's great.
Okay, I'll take that.
So, but I
I
think
did not pay for this endorsement.
I know. One book that I thought was great, that's a real simple read. It's Who Moved My Cheese?
Oh yeah, great,
About
great book. Yeah.
change and kind of, especially when I think at one point I bought the book and gave it to all my team members to read so that they don't, people get used to doing the same thing over and over again. And when you bring
Yes.
on new stuff, it's really challenging. So.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to tangent here for just a second because you said something that I get pushback a lot from docs or team or owners of businesses, where I say, well, buy this book, have your whole team read it, and get them all on board. Oh man, I'm gonna have to pay them for that extra time. Or it's like, no, like it's part of the job.
Mhm.
So you just asked people to read a book so you can all get on the same page, and they
Mhm.
did it.
Mhm. Well, yeah, they did. It was a long time ago, but hey, I bought it as a present and I gave
Yeah,
it to them and
right.
said, here, and then I brought it up at, a team meeting when we talked about it. So.
That's when you know you have the right or wrong people on. If they're like, well, if I'm going to do this, I have to be paid for it. It's like,
Yeah.
well, I'm not asking you to like do anything extreme. I'm asking you to read a book. It's going to improve your own life. It's like
Which will help you too, right?
which
So.
will help you too. Yeah, it's not just about here in the job, but in life in general. It's so true. Okay, well, speaking of my book, The Practice RX, I focus a lot on team culture, team performance, and the foundation for that being the foundation for business growth. And you've experienced that over the last few years. But what do you find? And when you talk to your colleagues, and I know you're very involved in the Spears group, like
Mhm.
what do you hear other practice owners talk about that is the biggest challenge that they're facing when it comes to their teams and their culture?
I think a lot of people don't really understand what a culture is or have
Mm,
it set up. What I do notice is people who are in practice for themselves tend to have problems setting up a culture. It depends on their personality, but a lot of them do. Some people who are in a corporate setting, and not that I'm advocating corporate versus anything, but
private practice, sure.
corporate settings, some of the doctor owners of corporate practices, because it's a corporate setting, the corporation has the culture set up for them, which might make it easier for a new doctor rather than trying to solve the problem on your own. Because there's a lot, I think it's hard to set up a culture. It's a big process to go through. So.
It is definitely a process. In the book, The Road Less Stupid, Keith Cunningham talks about how, culture is not the perks you give.
Mhm.
There's a lot more involved in it. And in my next book, The Culture Equation, or my next book, The Culture Equation, it's all about that, right? You do have to set it up. You have to take the time. It's important.
It's kind of like, if you go into a restaurant, a mom and pop restaurant might be cool and everything, but if you go into McDonald's, it's always the same because they have their culture set
Yeah.
up. So it's like what works. If you're on your own, you have to set that up yourself, and that's a huge challenge. So.
Yeah, it's undeniable too, right? Like people might front, oh, McDonald's, it's cheap stuff, but that's the culture, right? They don't try to pretend there's something they're not,
Mhm.
and it's really important to have that way. How can people reach out to you if they had some questions for you or just wanted to, say thanks or whatever? What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Um, Probably to send me an email would probably be the best way. So we were just talking about my email. One of my emails isn't working, but the facesortho@cox.net is a good email to reach me at, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody. So
Awesome. We'll put that in the show notes for sure. All right. This is a deep question, but what's the best advice that you've received in life or in business?
okay, so I would probably say this is the best advice that held true to me is whatever you decide to do something that you like to do and that you're going to enjoy and be good at. And this came from when I was going into university. I can't even remember who told me, but I told somebody that I wanted to go into medicine at that time, and they said, well, make sure you take classes that you're going to do good at and be good at and that you like, because if you do something that you don't like, you're not going to be as successful at it. So make sure whatever challenge you take, you're going to enjoy it. So.
I love that. I think it's so important to find a way to just bring your passion to the job, not necessarily can only find the job that you're passionate about. We were, speaking of enjoyment, we went on a cruise recently and for this dental event that we were in, and there's a girl there who, before you walk into the buffet, you have to use, they have Purell stations, right, for you to wash your hands, get Purell, because you're on a cruise, right? It's a big, one person gets sick, everybody gets sick, right? So there's a girl there from the Philippines, and her job was to hold, even though they had Purell stations, was to hold the Purell bottle and have you, like, if you don't do the station, that she, but you're washy, and she did this whole, she would dance around it. She would, washy. She was
they have those on every cruise.
Really?
Yes.
It was so crazy how enjoyable she was to this job, and she made up a song and laughed. And you're just like, this is a girl who no way in her life grew up going, I can't wait to be a Purell girl. But she brought that passion to her job. She was having fun. So that's great advice. Definitely do that. Last question for you is, what's the best resource or tool that you use to grow your practice?
Jeez, the best research. I think I use my colleagues. So, because
Nice.
I think that's a really big benefit. So here in Arizona, we have the Arizona Orthodontic Study Group. So any orthodontist in Arizona, join our study group. So,
Yeah.
but we meet once a month, and it's, we get to talk to each other, and, we have bring in speakers and stuff, but the best thing is when you sit down during lunch with a group of other orthodontists and you talk about, hey, what are you doing for this? How do you do that? That's, a really great resource. And those are people that are, in the business doing it. Even if somebody's having problems, you hear what their problems are, and that all helps. So I think that's great. And this is the one other thing that you made me think of when you were talking before and asked me that previous question is, I think it's important to get outside your comfort zone. And I know you made a big deal of that, because if you're not pushing yourself to the limit a little bit, then, and you're always comfortable, then there's no room for advancement or getting ahead in what you're trying to do.
Yeah, 100%. That's so true. You just got to be willing just to push yourself out there a little bit. If you're not growing, you're dying. And we want to be doing that. Well, Dr. Bader, you are awesome always to talk to. Thank you so much for being a guest on our show today, one of our professionals. We love talking to professionals. To your point at the very end there about talking with other people, that's what we hope to do here on this show, is to have people listen in and hear, oh, wow, I never thought about it that way, or that's a really good way to put that. And it's a reason why we have the Propreneur Network now, to have people come and mastermind in their business together. And that's really our whole goal. So thank you for being a part of that. And man, we just really appreciate your time and your willingness to be on the show.
All right, Dino. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much again for listening to the Propreneur Podcast. We really appreciate your support. If you haven't subscribed already, please make sure you do so. Also, if you feel like you might be a good fit for our podcast as a guest, or know somebody who you think would be, go ahead and email us at dino@dinowatt.com. Again, thanks for support. We'll see you on the next episode.